The dim fluorescent lights of the music store hummed like a distant storm as 12-year-old Jamie clutched the cherry-red electric guitar, his small fingers flying across the fretboard in a raw, frantic attempt at Eddie Van Halen's Eruption. His heart hammered so hard he could taste copper in his mouth, every note a desperate scream against the crushing weight of his father's recent death, the empty house, the silence that had swallowed his world. This was his only escape, the strings vibrating like lifelines under his calloused fingertips. The guitar felt alive in his hands, its weight both burden and salvation, pulling him from the abyss of grief that threatened to drown him every waking hour. He had snuck into the store after school, backpack slung low, dodging the suspicious glances of the sales clerks. The air smelled of polished wood, stale coffee, and that unmistakable tang of amplifier ozone. Rows of instruments lined the walls like silent guardians, their glossy finishes reflecting his tear-streaked face. Jamie's father had been a weekend guitarist, strumming old Van Halen riffs in their cramped living room, teaching his son the basics before the cancer stole him away 6 months ago. "Music doesn't die, kid," Dad had whispered on his last good day, voice frail as autumn leaves. "It waits for someone brave enough to wake it up." Those words echoed in Jamie's mind now, fueling each hammer-on and pull-off, his technique sloppy but fierce, born from nights alone in his room practicing until his fingers bled. "Kid, I said put it down and get out," the burly owner barked, storming over with a face like thunder. His name tag read Frank, and his belly strained against a faded band tee from some forgotten 80s tour. "This isn't a playground. You're scaring customers and you can't afford to break that thing. Out. Now." Jamie froze, the final squill dying in a pathetic whimper. Tears burned his eyes as he lowered the guitar, hands shaking so violently the instrument nearly slipped. Humiliation flooded him, hot and suffocating, twisting in his gut like a knife. He was just a nobody orphan with ripped jeans, scuffed sneakers, and dreams too big for his scrawny frame. His mom worked double shifts at the diner, coming home too exhausted to notice his silent sobs. School was a blur of pitying stares and bullies who mocked his second-hand clothes. This store had been his sanctuary for weeks, brief stolen moments where he could pretend the music still connected him to his dad. One more rejection, and the fragile spark inside him might finally extinguish forever, leaving only the cold void. He turned toward the door, shoulders slumped, the guitar's strap digging into his neck like an accusation. The other customers. A middle-aged couple browsing pedals and a teenager with headphones, averted their eyes, the awkward silence thicker than fog. Jamie's vision blurred, he could already picture the long walk home through the rain-slicked streets, the empty apartment waiting like a tomb. His fingers itched to run back, to smash the guitar against the wall in defiance, but fear pinned him. What if this was it? The last time music ever felt real? "Pick it back up, kid." The voice was calm, gravelly, laced with that unmistakable California drawl that had soundtracked 1,000 teenage rebellions. Jamie spun around so fast he nearly tripped. There, leaning casually against a rack of towering Marshall amps with that wild mane of hair and an easy, knowing grin, stood Eddie Van Halen himself, legend in the flesh. The air in the store shifted instantly, charged with an invisible current. Frank the owner went pale, his mouth opening and closing like a beached fish. A couple of employees froze mid-shelf, one dropping a pack of strings with a clatter that echoed like thunder. Time seemed to stretch, the world narrowing to the space between Jamie and the rock god. Eddie's eyes, sharp, intense, carrying the weight of battles fought on stages under blinding lights, locked onto Jamie's. Was this real? Or just another cruel hallucination, the kind that haunted his sleepless nights when grief morphed into fever dreams? Jamie's pulse roared in his ears, a frantic drumbeat matching the opening riff of Panama. His breath caught, chest tight with suspense. One wrong word, one blink, and the apparition might vanish, leaving him more broken than before. Eddie pushed off the amps with fluid grace, his black leather jacket creaking softly. He wasn't in full stage regalia, just jeans, a simple tee, and that effortless charisma that made arenas fall silent. But to Jamie, he was larger than life, a beacon cutting through the storm. "Don't let anyone kill that fire," Eddie said, nodding at the guitar still dangling from Jamie's trembling hands. "Play it like you mean it. The world needs more of that. Go on." Jamie's fingers tightened on the neck, tears spilling freely now, tracing hot paths down his dirt-smudged cheeks. The weight of the moment pressed on him like a physical force, suspense coiling in his belly, fear and hope warring in his veins. What if he messed up? What if Eddie laughed, or worse, pitied him? But beneath the terror surged something deeper, the echo of his father's voice, the raw ache of loss demanding release. Slowly, almost reverently, he lifted the guitar again. The cherry-red body gleamed under the lights, strings humming with potential. Frank stammered, "Mr. Van Halen, sir, I didn't know, the kid was just..." Eddie waved a hand dismissively, never breaking eye contact with Jamie. "Let the boy play. I've heard worse from pros who should know better." His tone was light, but there was steel beneath it, the kind forged in years of industry sharks and personal demons. He grabbed a nearby stool, spun it around, and sat, arms crossed, expectant. The store fell into a hush, even the distant hum of traffic outside seemed to fade. Jamie closed his eyes, drawing a shaky breath that tasted of salt and possibility. His mind raced back. Flashes of his dad in their tiny garage, teaching him the tapping technique that defined Eddie's style. "It's not about speed, son. It's about heart. Let it hurt, then let it sing." The memory fueled him. His left hand found the fretboard, right hand poised. The first notes of Eruption spilled out again, hesitant at first, but building. Then the tapping began, those lightning-fast hammer-ons that had once seemed impossible for his small hands. Notes cascaded like fireworks, raw emotion pouring through every bend and vibrato. It wasn't perfect, there were squeaks, missed frets, the occasional buzz. But it was alive, bleeding with the pain of empty dinner tables, of clutching Dad's old guitar pick like a talisman, of nights whispering prayers to a silent sky. Eddie leaned forward, eyes widening slightly, not in judgment, but recognition. A small smile tugged at his lips, the kind of approval that could rewrite a boy's destiny. Suspense thickened the air. Jamie could feel the eyes of everyone in the store, the weight of expectation. His heart thundered, sweat beading on his forehead. One slip, and the spell might break. But he pushed on, transitioning into a loose cover of "Hot for Teacher," infusing it with his own grief-twisted phrasing, slower bends that wept, faster runs that raged against fate. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Eddie nodded along, foot tapping. "That's it, kid. Feel it. Don't think, attack." His voice cut in during a pause, encouraging, guiding without condescension. Jamie's tears flowed harder, but now they were different, cathartic, washing away layers of isolation. He imagined his dad watching from somewhere beyond, smiling that proud, lopsided grin. The music swelled, filling the store, bouncing off walls lined with posters of rock legends. Customers gathered, phones forgotten, drawn by the unlikely symphony. Frank stood rooted, his earlier anger evaporated into stunned awe. As Jamie reached a feverish peak, fingers blurring in a solo that channeled every unshed sob, every lonely echo in his chest, a string snapped with a sharp twang. The sudden silence crashed down like a guillotine. Jamie gasped, eyes flying open in panic. The broken string dangled like a severed lifeline. Humiliation surged back, hot, immediate. He'd ruined it. Ruined everything. His hands dropped, shoulders curling inward as the suspense of potential failure crystallized into reality. But Eddie was already moving. In one smooth motion, he stood, crossed the distance, and gently took the guitar. "Easy there. Happens to the best of us." He examined the instrument with practiced hands, then glanced at Frank. Got a spare set of slinkies? 9-gauge. Frank nodded frantically and scurried off, returning moments later. Eddie restrung it himself, his fingers, those legendary hands that had redefined rock guitar, working with surprising patience. As he tuned, he spoke softly to Jamie, voice low enough that only the boy could hear. I was your age once, you know. Skinny kid with a beat-up guitar and a dad who didn't always get it. Lost him young too. Music saved me. It'll save you, but only if you fight for it. Don't let the Franks of the world dim your light. Eddie's eyes held a depth of shared pain, a vulnerability that made the legend human. Suspense lingered in Jamie's chest. Would this moment fade? Was it a dream that would evaporate when he woke in his cold bed? Eddie handed the guitar back, now perfectly tuned. Try the ending again. From the heart. Jamie's hand steadied under the master's gaze. This time, the notes poured out fuller, richer, infused with newfound courage. The store erupted in spontaneous applause as he finished, not with technical perfection, but with soul-shattering intensity. Eddie clapped loudest, pulling Jamie into a quick, brotherly hug that smelled of cigarettes and stage lights. You've got it, kid. Keep playing. Find me someday when you're ready to tear up a real stage. As Eddie turned to leave, pausing to sign an autograph on Jamie's backpack with a Sharpie from his pocket, the boy stood taller. The weight of grief remained, but it no longer crushed him alone. Music thrummed in his veins, a living promise. Outside, the rain had stopped, and for the first time in months, the world didn't feel quite so empty. Jamie watched the legend disappear into the bustling street, heart full, fingers still buzzing. He would play again tomorrow. And every day after. The fire wasn't just lit, it burned eternal.